All right. Well, hey, let's welcome 76ers Outsiders Krystle Rich back to Philly Pressbox Radio. Krystle, welcome.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Hello, Krystle. So
Hello.
good to see you. Great to see you.
So good to rejoin you guys. It's been so long.
Bet.
You've had a busy last year or so, and we'll talk about some of that as we go along. Listen, I want to get right to it. This is driving me nuts. It drives a lot of people nuts. And that, of course, would be Ben Simmons. You see the tweets during Sixers Outsiders. You hear the talk on 97.5. You fill in on there occasionally. He's got so much talent. He's so much fun to watch often, but he's also frustrating to watch. And as has been pointed out, since the All-Star break, his numbers are not that great. Below 13 points a game. He's shooting under 50%, which is just crazy since none of his shots are beyond 5 feet. Does he drive you crazy as well, Krystle?
Yeah, and on Sixers Outsiders lately, we have not been taking it easy on Ben Simmons, and mainly because we have seen these flashes of what he can become. To start the season, it wasn't the best start that we would have hoped for, but 2 weeks before we had the road trip, which they went 4-2 on, he started to be really aggressive. And there was a couple of games, even back to get back, where he was giving you 20 points per game. He was giving you the double doubles. He was giving you the boards. He was assisting his other teammates. And then after this road trip, which was tough in its own way because there was no Joel Embiid, so maybe he felt like he had to carry the load. But it's like something literally flipped in his mind where aggression was now at the backseat. And even when he was aggressive in some of those games, his touch at the rim was terrible, to be honest, in a few games. And his shots that he usually can make with ease, they just weren't going in. So Ben Simmons, after that, after the All-Star break, his numbers have regressed. And I think last game it was slightly better. I think it's a step in the right direction, not exactly where he needs to be, but we did see some flashes of him doing some things like attacking the rim in the half court and in transition that makes me hopeful that we will see the Ben Simmons that we saw before their previous West Coast trip.
So is it safe to say that you're not buying into Doc Rivers' scoring is not important, Ben does everything else for us? You're not buying that story?
Well, here's what I would say to that. I would say that Doc Rivers is so media savvy. He knows what to say to the media and he knows what not to say. So I think for us, that's what he's feeding us because he knows that's the smartest answer to give. I truly believe that behind closed doors, Doc Rivers, Sam Cassell are both really pressing upon Ben Simmons of how important it is to be not only a distributor and a pass-first point guard, but someone who can be aggressive and score for this team. And during that stretch when Ben Simmons was being aggressive, I noticed that in the first quarters of games, he was not a pass-first point guard. He was, I'm going to the rim, I'm going to get mine, I'll give you a baby hook, I'm going to get my points first, and then I'll distribute. And he somehow got a little bit away from that. And when he did that, those were the games where he gave you those 20 points per game.
Well, meanwhile, Joel Embiid may not get the official MVP award this season since he's missed a third of the team's games, but man, he's back, and when he's on the court, he is special. He seems to have taken a big jump this year with his performance. Do you agree?
Oh, 100%. And the crazy thing about Joel Embiid's second game back is that he dropped 35 and 33 minutes. He is literally leading the NBA in the player efficiency rate. He's so good even when he can get a little bit better. Remind you, it's just his second game back. In his first game back, he eased into the game a little bit. He still played his game, but he got it there slowly. This game, he came out of the blocks firing. He was playing bully ball. Of course, he's going to take his shot from deep. I can't take that away from him because he's big, because he can do it. He was getting better passing out the double team and recognizing the double team before it came. Joel Embiid is something so special. And I've been saying it all season long that we really have to take every opportunity that we can to appreciate this Joel Embiid, because we all remember the Joel Embiid who just sometimes wasn't in shape. It doesn't feel like that this year is the case.
Yeah. Well, 51 games in, 35 and 16, tied with Brooklyn. Brooklyn's not going to go away either. They hung in there for a month, basically, with the same basically tie with the Nets without Embiid. They're without Durant. How's this thing going to go towards the end of the year? And are the Sixers going to end up with this home court advantage?
Well, I think that the NBA, they might have something against the Sixers, to be honest with you, because their second half season schedule is really hard. Not only did they have that West Coast road trip, but if you remember, it pretty much was just a road trip that included teams all over the country. It started in New York, they went out west, they went to Denver, they came back, they played the Chicago Bulls, and then they had one day off before they played 2 home games, and then they're on another road trip where they're playing 4 teams, and after that road trip, then their schedule gets really hard where they're playing teams like the Brooklyn Nets. They're playing teams like the Clippers, Golden State, Milwaukee. So I do believe that if Joel Embiid continues to trend upward, and we know he can pretty much do whatever he wants, if we can keep him healthy, if we can get Ben Simmons to be as aggressive as he was before this road trip, and Tobias Harris really just to do what he's doing, because this season he has been excellent, 100% got snubbed for that all-star bid, then I think that we can hold on to that high number 1, number 2 seed. But the second half of the season is very challenging for the Sixers, and sometimes you see them playing with tired legs, and I 100% can understand why, looking at their schedule.
Well, you mentioned Tobias Harris, and that was where I was going to go next. He has really played well this year under his old pal, Doc Rivers, and especially in the fourth quarter, instead of disappearing, he's a guy who apparently, seems to want the ball and has just been great coming into clutch situations.
Yeah, Tobias Harris this year is different. And what I love, the piece of advice that Doc gave him that he shared with the media, is he said that Doc Rivers says, you prove that you're an all-star in the playoffs. And we know the first year that we got Tobias Harris, he had a tremendous slump towards the end of the season, and it even led into the playoffs. That was the year that we had Jimmy Butler, where I remember him going 0 of 23 from deep. And I think that he really wants those days to be long gone, and he has a switch. And before I give him all the credit, you really have to give a lot of credit to Doc too. Not all of it, but a lot belongs to Doc Rivers, because even before Doc Rivers coached one single game this season, I remember him telling Tobias, listen, you need to make quicker, more decisive decisions. Stop dribbling for 10 years and then trying to figure out what you're going to do. Doc Rivers has coached him up in LA and the Clippers before he came to Philadelphia, and that was his best year before this year, before reuniting with Doc Rivers. I think the all-star snub is probably the best thing that could have happened to Tobias Harris. And here's a hot take for you guys. I believe that right now, Tobias Harris is the number 2 option on this team following Joel Embiid. Right now, it's hard to say that it's Ben Simmons when he is in this slump. And to be honest with you, we've only seen him have a 2 to 3 week good stretch this season. So right now, I believe that Tobias Harris is that number 2 for the Sixers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Krystle, we know that Dwight Howard's a solid backup for Joel when they need him. Does this team have enough depth overall? You mentioned tired legs. Do they have enough depth down the stretch and through a playoff run? How deep can they go?
It's gonna be a little bit tough. Obviously, we were looking to make big moves before the trade deadline. Kyle Lowry was a guy that we thought we might get. Lonzo Ball was a guy that we thought that the Sixers thought that they would get. And I think that because both of those teams decided to keep those players, that may have possibly been our plan A, and everyone knows you have to have a plan B. Lonzo Ball probably was our plan B, and that went out the window too. So it's good that we have George Hill, although he has not played in a game yet. I think it will help the second unit. I think that Shake Milton then becomes better when he gets to really live at the 2. You saw he gets some ticky-tack offensive fouls and just sometimes loses his dribble occasionally. Although I think he's getting better handling the ball. I think he'll be even better as a pure 2 coming off the bench with George Hill. I still think that it feels like they need one more piece, and we'll see if Daryl Morey, Elton Brand do anything this season. But it's hard to live on that hope 100%. I do think that they can make it to the finals. Getting past Brooklyn is going to be very hard if Brooklyn is at full health. Joel Embiid pretty much has to be perfect. Tobias Harris pretty much has to be perfect. And Ben Simmons has to be way more aggressive than we see him in these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, we'll see if the Sixers do anything in the buyout market. I think they have until Friday to do that. You mentioned George Hill. It was nice to see that he traveled with the team to Boston last night. We saw him dribbling before the game. The hand looked good to me. They haven't provided any sort of specific update. When do you think we might see him in a game?
I really don't know the answer to this. Any answer that I give would just be speculative. I believe that maybe after this road trip, this 4-game road trip, we just had one of the games, then we might see him. But even looking at the schedule right there, after that road trip, we're immediately playing Brooklyn. We're immediately playing the Clippers and then Golden State. So I'm not sure if that is the time that they want to debut him either. So my guess would be sometime after this 4-game road trip, but we will see what the organization decides.
Hey, Krystle, do you think that the Bucks still have an outside chance of being a real contender here? I mean, they're only a couple games back. Do you see them being for real as well and getting in the mix here?
Well, that's an interesting question, and it always takes me back to the year before with Jimmy Butler and the Heat, and I completely believe that there was no way they were going to go far in the playoffs at all, and then they sat there and won the Eastern Conference Finals and made it to the finals. So it's hard to count out the Bucks. I don't think that they will be able to contend with the Sixers. I don't think they'll be able to contend with Brooklyn. But when you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, you always have a chance. So that's the best thing I can give you. But I do believe that the Brooklyn Nets, they've made moves like getting LaMarcus Aldridge and getting Blake Griffin to be able to contend with guys like Joel Embiid and guys like Giannis. Because Giannis, when Brett Brown was the coach of this team, this is the one big compliment I'll give to Brett Brown. He made a great adjustment putting Joel Embiid on Giannis, and that length and that wingspan really kind of slowed him down. Even though he still got his an 8, it slowed him down from what he typically does. So I don't see them going to the Eastern Conference Finals or winning the division. But when you have Giannis, there's always that chance.
Well, we focus on the Sixers and the competition in the East all the time, but what about out west? There are some great teams out west. I know LeBron and AD are still sidelined for the Lakers. Who do you think is going to ultimately come out of the Western Conference?
That's a really good question. A lot of people are interested in that too. I think that a lot of Clippers fans are really excited and they just think that they can win the West. But I always just think it's silly to count out LeBron, no matter what state he's in. So if he is healthy, him and AD are healthy, I don't care if they start as the 8th seed. I don't care what seed they start, even if the path is harder. This guy is and LeBron James, he's so experienced. He's so clutch. He's literally one who can put an entire team on his back and drag them to the finals. So I think that my original pick would be the Clippers. But if I'm about to call him Joel Embiid, if LeBron James is healthy and AD are both healthy, I do believe the seeding does not matter. They will make it.
Krystle, before we run out of time with you, you've had a lot going on since we talked to you last August, and you had just gotten engaged, and you couldn't even show us your ring because you were getting fitted or whatever. What do you got going on in your real life?
Yeah,
let's see that ring.
My ring size. You guys can finally see. I remember when I joined you guys in August. Really height of the pandemic, and my ring was getting size. So since the last time I talked to you guys, it's been a whirlwind. I recently got married. I'm doing Sixers Outsiders. I'm freelancing for some other people. You guys see me on 97.5, The Fanatic filling in. I do some work on Big Tent Network. So it's just been, I feel like I never get a second to rest. But I can't complain about any of it. Everything is good. And added to that, it's just real life stuff is too. Like I work out a lot. I'm the main provider of dinner in this household. So I do a lot of cooking. But life has been really, really good since I've seen you guys last.
Yeah. And for people who don't know, your husband is Don Bell of Channel 3, KYW3, right?
That's right. That's right.
All right. Hey, one other thing. You and Tyrone do a great job on Sixers Outsiders. I watch you whenever I can and when I can stay up late. Sometimes you're a little too late for an old guy like me. I watched your show last night, and you're still doing the show remotely. Are they going to let you back into the Wells Fargo Center to do the show from there at some point?
That's a really good question, and it's a question that I've asked at times too. And I believe it just goes beyond my job, NBC Sports Philadelphia, and goes more so to the NBA and how many people they will even allow in the building when there's games being played. So for right now, we're broadcasting from home. My hope is to be back in the studio when the playoffs start, but honestly, who really knows? Because I think that if it came down to like fans or us, even I would want the fans or the kids to have their chance to see a game after the year that we've been through. So we can only hope for the playoffs to be back in the studio this season.